My name is Dave Heidemann. Welcome to Aquatic Eye. This is How to Shoot Fish Portraits Part 2. In Part 1, we discussed something about strobe positioning, how to select an approachable subject where you're not going to damage the reef, okay? And then how to slowly approach the subject, and finally you work the subject. Today we're going to talk about composition considerations and other portrait considerations to kind of capture the character or personality of the animal. All right, let's see some examples. All right, now to talk about composition, we touched the first time to get close to the subject to reduce the water column, okay, come close to filling the frame with your subject, and in general we want to get low and shoot up to have a non-distracting background. If we can't find a non-distracting background, we can find an interesting background, or we can open up our aperture to blur the background, or try different strobe positionings, okay? Now let's talk a little bit more about composition. One is the rule of thirds, and you can see on this slide, instead of making the subject dead center, we can sometimes make the most important part of the subject in one of these aspects of the rule of thirds. Here's an example of a goby, and rather than placing him dead center in the image, we made it according to the rule of thirds. Probably more of an interesting image. Another example is to shoot a diagonal. You can rotate the camera. Here's a crab. I happen to think that rotating it and having it at a little bit of a diagonal gives a little bit more tension and interest to the picture. Another is we can look for a color, an interesting color. Here's a beautiful, colorful goby as well as a similar color background. Or we can emphasize texture and shadows based on strobe placement. You can see the nice textures in this black and white image of a turtle. Or we can emphasize line, leading lines, like this trunkfish swimming up a line with the body of the trunkfish and the line kind of oriented in a similar fashion. Okay, another thing we can do is frame the subject. This fish kind of framed itself in the middle of that opening there. Or we can frame this trunkfish with a beautiful purple portion of a coral. Okay, we can frame the subject. It's fun to show some depth, and I like to always get down, shoot up, and if I can, show some of the undersurface, like with this turtle. We're shooting up, and not only does that eliminate a distracting background, it can add some depth and perspective to the image where you can see the undersurface of the water there. Or you can show a reflection of this needle-nosed fish. You can see a reflection of the fish on the undersurface. And we have a separate tutorial on taking pictures of animals with your dive buddy, but that of course adds more depth and perspective and interest to the image, as you can see with this stingray and a diver in the background, or this picture of a moray eel and a diver in the background. Now, in addition to just basic composition, other things I like to do with portraits, one thing I like is a straight-on shot, where you try to completely get the fish to look right at you. It can be very difficult to do. Here's a shot of a lionfish looking directly at me. Same with this butterfly fish. It's always interesting if you can get them to look right at you. Here's a picture of a scorpion fish, very symmetrical with the leading lines even. And here's a nudibranch and a trunkfish, just looking right at you. Another thing we can do is emphasize behavior. Here's a picture of a batfish in the middle of a yawn, you know, with the mouth open. Here's another behavior shot of a lizardfish eating an unfortunate juvenile flounder from a profile view and then from a straight-on perspective. You can show mating, cleaning stations. That's another interesting way to show portraits. You can show an attitude, like an ominous attitude, something that might convey a sense of danger, like this moray eel, a Caribbean reef shark, green moray. You can show sadness, like this batfish, or sometimes it appears that the fish are smiling, like the parrotfish, or this dolphin here, or this smile on the porcupine fish. Sometimes fish just look inquisitive or have their own unique personality. This fish kind of twisted its head looking at me, and it seemed to have an inquisitive nature to it. We talked earlier about working the subject using different angles, apertures, cropping, and I sometimes like to get the eye and a portion of the teeth or mouth, like in this green moray, or from the underside of this lizardfish, showing a part of its mouth, teeth, and side view of its eye and cornea. or the way that this was imaged, kind of a close crop of an angelfish. There's different things that you can do when taking portraits. One other thing, respect not only the reef but the animal. We don't want to stress out the animal, never touch the animal, and sometimes enough is enough. You have to, I say it's nice to work the subject, experiment with different angles and strobe positions. Sometimes it's good to say, let's leave this guy alone and move on, okay? And the last thing is, don't forget to review, modify your pictures and show them to your friends, but show only your best images unless you're using them for teaching, okay? Just show your best images rather than show 30 pictures of a very similar thing. Pick 2 or 3 of the best ones and show those. Okay, thank you very much, and this concludes the portraits.